Is the Flowerpot's candle heater a complete hoax? No, it is not. Okay, but I want you just to think closely about what it actually means to be able to take heat from a tea light candle and to try and use it through the Flowerpot system so that you can actually get usable heat. If you've been watching videos or reading blogs that say with like 1 or 2 tea lights underneath any combination of flower pots or flower pots with screws and nuts and bolts and washers, you know, you'll get enough power to raise the temperature of your room up massively. The bottom line is no, that is a hoax blog. Alright, that is a hoax video, definitely. If you go onto Wikipedia and you search for information about candles, you will find that the average candle, not necessarily a tea light, but the average candle produces about 80 watts worth of heat, okay, 80. So no matter what, you know, the Flowerpot is not an over unity device. No matter what, you'll still be only playing with 80 watts worth of power if you've just got one candle. Now, if you've got 4 candles burning underneath the Flowerpot, you'll end up with a heat source which is over 300 watts, because it's 1 8 is 8, 2 8 is 16, 3 8 is 24, 4 8 is 32, 320 watts. Okay, that is if you're getting the full 80 watts out of each tea light. So if you think about it, your electric radiator that you might wheel out into a spare bedroom in emergencies, or you know, when you've got someone staying there, or the mains gas heating is gone, that could be a 1.6 kilowatt heater, let's say. And this would be 0.3 kilowatt heating. Alright, so 4 candles basically will not do it. If you were to have, okay, if you were to have 3 setups, each with 4 candles underneath them, you will end up with 320 multiplied by 3. So you'll be burning 12 tea light candles, alright? Not just 1 or 2 or 3. That'll be 12 tea light candles to get over 900 watts worth of power, on the basis that each candle is providing you with something approximating, you know, a certain quantity of heat. Now, the other issue that I've seen people coming out with is their own temperature measurements, and what they've been using has been what is typically called a infrared thermometer. Okay, it looks like a little handgun. It's got a hand grip, it's got a you know, a trigger, and it's got a little screen, and from that you can then read the temperature. Those things are surface temperature measuring devices. So if you point it at the floor, you're not measuring the temperature of the room, you're measuring the temperature of the floor. If you point it at the Flowerpot, yes, you can measure the temperature on certain points on the Flowerpot surface, depending upon where you're pointing the thermometer at. It is not a digital thermometer, it is a surface temperature reading device. So you can't work out what the temperature of the air is in your flat using a surface temperature reading device and pointing it at the floor. Alright, you just can't do that. You'll be measuring the temperature of the floor. You could have air temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, you have a floor temperature of 10 degrees Celsius, you point it at the floor, and the floor will say you got a temperature of 10 degrees. And if you think that's the room temperature, you are sadly mistaken. You don't know how to use your technology. Okay, so point to the Flowerpot, you get a surface temperature reading on the Flowerpot. But remember, this is a radiant heating device, okay? It does do some convection because it's going to get warm, but also to the most part it's radiation, and the infrared radiation is ideal for warming up human skin. But you've got to be in line of sight of the thing which is radiating the heat. Okay, so you got to get close to it. So you can have this thing on your table, or you know, you can get cross-legged on the floor and get close to it. But you know, 3 of them will provide you something approximating a good quantity of heat. Something approximating, or let's rephrase that: a workable, usable quantity of heat. Not necessarily, you know, massive tons of heat. You need probably many more of the things going in order to try and provide you with all the heat you needed in your flat or in your kitchen or whatever. But it's the number of candles and how much power each candle is actually giving out. Now, some of these things won't provide you with tons of power, all right? Because you may get a smaller flame, you may get a larger flame. It will vary depending upon the candle. But we can, on the basis of the Wikipedia, article, give you some kind of understanding, or develop some kind of understanding of roughly how much power we can expect from a candle. What would be even better is if you have a reflective surface, because you're dealing with a form of light, okay? The warmth which will be radiating, all right, radiation, not convection, but radiating from the Flowerpot itself, is a form of light. It's called infrared. light bounces off shiny surfaces. So if you can get some kind of like massive reflector behind your array of 3 Flowerpot heaters, each with 4 tea lights underneath it, then you're getting something closer to a proper electric fire with 1 bar going on it, okay, which still isn't all that much, but it's still something. And it's a question of working out how many you feel comfortable using, taking into account the air quality issues that you get when you're burning paraffin wax from cheap tea light candles. And that's something you got to work out for yourself. And also you got to think about the quality of tea light candles that you're buying and whether that's going to have some kind of effect. All right, this is not, in my opinion, a permanent heating solution. I don't think that you could, turn off the mains gas and electric and then just heat the place purely upon flower pots. I don't think it'll be all that comfortable for you. All right, but as something which is a temporary issue, all right, or a temporary thing once in a while, or something you want to, get going to keep the place warm whilst you're doing other things before you get your fire going in the evening, or let's say you don't want to use your ethanol fireplace and you want to use something else instead, or you've got a power cut, you got to think about the application. Then it can be useful, all right, but it's certainly not the way of doing all your mains, your main central heating in the place with a couple of flower pots and a few candles. I mean, I personally do. I'm of the opinion, because this video is, is my opinion based upon my experience, based upon my knowledge, that that's not necessarily a totally viable solution. So I will tell you right now, the Flowerpot candle heater is not a hoax. All right, it is something which can be used as part of your arsenal as off-grid technology, to be able to provide you with some radiant warmth. You really get it clear inside your head as to what radiant warmth is, as opposed to convection warmth. All right, because convection warmth heats the air in the place, and then the warm air in the place then heats all the things in the place, so they can then become a small store of heat to help keep the temperature up. So if you do get a typical power cut, after a couple of days, bam, everything gets totally arctic because all the stored heat eventually goes. I knew of one old guy who moved into a social housing flat that was entirely built in concrete. All right, and he says on the when he moved in there, he had to have the gas on 24 hours a day for 4 weeks for all the concrete, all the walls to absorb enough heat for the thermostat on the gas to start turning off once in a while. Stored heat is quite a serious issue. But my point here is that there is a difference between radiant heat and convection heat. Make an approximation of the quantity of wattage that your system is producing based upon the number of candles. Okay, we could say 80 watts, possibly less, possibly a little more, depending upon the candle, per candle. All right, 10 candles, 800 watts. And then compare and contrast that intellectually, okay, with the electric fireplace, or the electric fire which you take, or the electric oil-filled heater which you take into a spare bedroom when someone's coming over and you want to get that place nice and warm. All right, and just make an estimate here as to how many wattage that is and how much good it does, and then roughly how many candles and how many candle and flower pot heating arrangements you will need. And yes, it takes time for the flower pots to heat up, and it takes time for the candles to develop a full flame height, which can be variable depending upon the candle itself. But yeah, this thing, in my opinion, based upon my experiences, does do its job. It's not a hoax. But, know your tools, know your technology, know how you measure temperature properly, and then, you'll be fine.